Warm welcome. You're watching Explosive Exclusive here on Times Now on Blueprint with me, Meghna Deka. The focus for the next half hour is going to be the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Why is it that a conflict all the way across in Eastern Europe affects you? We'll get you all the details of that. But first up, there is some breaking news, and the very latest which is coming in. Well, the clouds of confusion are again gathering over this conflict. Well, Ukraine and NATO, they are trying their best to try and play down the possibility of a war after the Ukrainian president came out and said by tomorrow, 16th of February, Russia may invade Ukraine. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Germany is trying its best to try and diffuse the tension, having visited Russia as well as Ukraine. Russia and Germany are holding talks to try and resolve all issues via diplomacy. On the other hand, you have Britain, who's warned against any kind of complacency, given the way that you already have Russian troops having a ring fence around Ukraine, and Ukraine had at one point even said that they are all set to attack the nation by the 16th of January. Now Ukraine as well as NATO have been trying to play down, because after all it has had a far-reaching domino effect across the world. Barely any country is going to be left unsinged if there is any kind of war or aggression or signs of aggression from Russia. In fact, with no solution to this deadlock which is inside, the Indian embassy too has been sending out advisories to the Indian citizens, especially for the students, saying that they must temporarily leave the country. The tremors of this, of course, are being felt in Delhi as well. The government is monitoring the situation very closely. Here on Times Now, we are getting you minute-by-minute updates as well as ground reports as to what really is happening. We are going to be going across to Guillaume Ptak. He is a journalist who's joining us from Ukraine. He'll get us the very latest as to what is happening on the ground. But in the midst of it all, we must look very closely as to what are the efforts which are being made to try and de-escalate the tension which has already erupted. Remember, at a time when there is already crude oil price which has been spiraling up, there are fears that all recovering economies may feel the blowback in case there is any kind of aggression by Russia. There are already several threats as well as the threat of sanction which has been given out to Russia by the United States as well. So let me first go across to Guillaume Ptak, who's joining us, so that we get a sense of what really is happening in Ukraine. Thank you so much for joining us here on Times Now, and give us a sense, Guillaume, as to what really is the situation on the ground right now. How serious is the threat of an invasion which now Ukraine seems to be playing down?
At the moment, there are an estimated 145,000 Russian troops still massed along various stretches of Russia's border with Ukraine, including in Belarus. Roughly 500 combat aircraft also within range of Ukraine, and 40 combat ships conducting drills in the Black Sea. So obviously this massive buildup has triggered a lot of concern that Russia might invade Ukraine sometime soon. There have been in recent days some nods towards de-escalation. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that at this stage the talks should be continued and intensified, while Sergei Shoigu, who is Russia's defense minister, said either today or yesterday that some of the troops were heading back towards their permanent bases, after having conducted the drills.
Right.
So are those proper steps toward de-escalation, or just some sleight of hand on the part of the Russian government? It is obviously really hard to tell at the moment. The diplomatic activity continues to resolve the crisis peacefully, but it is really hard to make any kind of prediction at the moment.
Well, Guillaume, that's very important. Remember, Times Now is the only channel getting you these live reports with tying up with journalists who are telling us what really is the situation. Now, Guillaume, you were telling us about the diplomatic efforts that are currently on to diffuse the situation. Which all country? We are all aware that Germany stepped in. US, of course, has stepped in by issuing threats. What are the diplomatic back-channel talks which are currently on to try and diffuse it?
So the diplomatic talks continue. Diplomatic activities hasn't ceased at the moment. Today, the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was due to visit Moscow and talk to Vladimir Putin, while in Kiev, foreign dignitaries keep coming also. I believe that tomorrow the Speaker of the Polish Parliament is due to come to Kiev to speak with the Ukrainian government, and also as a show of support, obviously. And the day after tomorrow, Liz Truss, the UK's Foreign Secretary, is due to also also come to Kyiv and spend 2 days there. So the diplomatic activity continues, whether it can resolve the crisis peacefully and whether the Russian government was kind of inclined to negotiate in the first place is a matter of debate. Again, I wouldn't risk any prediction, but as long as we're talking, we're not shooting, which is definitely a good thing. Whether it can bring some concrete steps toward de-escalation is obviously another matter entirely.
Well, Guillaume, you're in an unenviable position right now. You're stuck there in Kyiv. Give us a sense of the fear. Is there anxiety of impending doom which is there amongst the people who are currently there? And I ask you this because here in India too, there are at least 20,000 Indians who are currently there in Ukraine that their families have been very concerned for. What's the mood on the ground? Is there a lot of anxiety, or do people feel that diplomacy is going to win the day?
I just came back from 3 weeks spent in Donbass to cover the situation on the ground. Donbass being the easternmost region of Ukraine that has been divided by a front line between the Ukrainian army and Russian-backed separatists for almost 8 years now. And I have found there the people, when it comes to the invasion, being split roughly into two camps. There's a half that believes that nothing is going to happen whatsoever and that it is either a Russian scare tactic, manipulation, or that a crisis has been either fabricated or overblown by the media. While the other half has shown a lot of wary resignation because those people have been living under a state of war for the past 8 years, and it is only the latest development for them. They don't have necessarily the economic means or the opportunities to leave the region if anything happens. So most of them told me that they were just ready to run to the shelters if anything happened. But many people do not have the means or the inclination to leave their home. As they said, this is our land. Why should we leave it because other people decide to fight for it?
Right. Well, Guillaume, thank you so much for joining us with these live reports from Kyiv. Here on Times Now, we're getting you ground reports and also a sense of what really are the diplomatic back-channel talks which are happening in order to try and diffuse the situation. Listen in fact, to the UK Prime Minister.
And that is to keep our embassy going in Kiev and to continue to ask Melinda Simmons, our fantastic ambassador, to do what she's doing. Now, that's a balanced decision. We have to face the fact that there is a risk, and we'll keep it under constant review. But one of the things we want to do is to show the UK's continued support for Ukraine, for stability in Ukraine. And I believe that keeping our embassy going for as long as possible is an important symbol.
Finally, you talk about sanctions. On the topic of money laundering, some of your Conservative colleagues, especially senior figures on the backbenches, say that this government hasn't done enough to stop the flow of dirty money into this country. Can you promise that the economic crime bill will be in the next Queen's speech?
So I don't think that it's fair to say the UK hasn't done a huge amount on dirty money, whether it's from Russia or anywhere else. And we've actually been globally, we've been out in the lead in tackling global corruption, in tracing the sources of ill-gotten gains. And we have imposed some very tough sanctions, if you recall, after the Russian invasion or the Russian annexation of Crimea, Sevastopol in 2014. Those sanctions remain in place. We have sanctions against everybody involved in the poisoning of Alexei Navalny, for instance. But what we want to do is strengthen now the package that we have, strengthen the measures we have against potential ill-gotten Russian money, whether here or anywhere anywhere for which we have responsibility, with new measures that will hit the companies and concerns that I've talked about, but also open up the Matryoshka doll, if you like, you know what I'm talking about, so that we see who really owns the companies that we're talking about, who really owns the properties that we're talking about. And those measures, yes, we will be bringing forward from the Economic Crime Bill.
In the Queen's speech?
Yes.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. The Prime Minister of United Kingdom. Remember, UK, along with several other countries, including Germany and US, have been trying their best to try and defuse the situation, be it threats or be it diplomacy. We hope that it works because it doesn't really benefit anyone to enter a war. In fact, let me go across to our strategic analyst today here on our show. Major General G.D. Bakshi is here with us, as well as Captain Alok Bansal. He's the director of India Foundation. General Bakshi, if I can come to you, you must put it into context, because many people are wondering why a conflict which is happening in Eastern Europe may have an impact on India, economically but also strategically.
Look, the simple fact is that if a conflict breaks out in Europe, and it is one of the largest concentration of troops we have seen since the Cold War, there is going to be a global impact in terms of the rise of oil prices. They'll shoot up, cross the 100-barrel mark by a big margin. Most countries are recovering from COVID. Their economies are just now trying to get back on their feet. It would be quite a blow. And there would be repercussions even otherwise. For India, we have to do a very fine balancing act between our strategic relationship with Russia, the prime source of our weaponry, high-tech weapons, and with the United States. So India has to, though none of our national interests are involved, our purposes are best served, our interests are best served by neutrality.
With neutrality, non-alignment, that has been India's historical stand. However, sorry to interrupt you, General Saab. In fact, we have two of the students who are joining us here on the show. We have Ashish, who's joining us, as well as Sanjana. Now, both of them are stranded there. They are there currently in Ukraine. Thank you for joining us here. It wouldn't be a very easy time. Ashish, if I can come to you. Ashish Giri, I believe you are there in Chernivtsi in Ukraine. So, Atish, give us a sense of what the situation is like there in Ukraine right now. What's the overbearing emotion that you may be feeling?
Ma'am, there is no panic situation, but most of the students leaving the country because of our Indian embassies early in the morning give us, if you want, then you can leave the country. But ma'am, the current situation is that the Ukrainian peoples are adapt to that. They are used to, because of 12-14. They say there is no panic situation because I am side of Romania. And there is no panic, not too much. But as a student, ma'am, from India, I am so afraid what happened next, because all news channels show that Russia will attack on 2 days, 3 days. And what happened next, panic about ourselves, what we do. Much of students get their tickets for flight, and the price of ticket is too much expensive, ma'am. We can't able to get the tickets because of their expense.
That's very sad. You've made a very valid point. Let me go across to Sanjana Vemula also. She's joining us from Ivano in Ukraine. Now, Sanjana, the government has sent out advisory saying that you must try and leave immediately, at least temporarily. You must leave Ukraine. You can return to it later, especially for students. Where do you stand right now? As even Ashish was telling us, at times the tickets are just too high for students to afford them. So is Ukrainian government helping you out in this time of need? Any kind of help coming your way?
Because there is no such support, we can't say, because even they are not sure about the situation, war situation. So right now they are busy in considering the war situation, because we have just 1 day and there is no response. So even there is no support from anywhere.
Oh, that's really sad. There is no support coming in from anyone. So, Ashish, I understand it must be a very hard time for now. Have you been in touch with your family back home in India? Do you have any idea as to what your future plan is going to be in the immediate future in case the reports come true, unfortunately, and any kind of aggression comes in from Russia?
Ma'am, we are waiting for Indian government order what they take a step. If they are taking something for us, then we will good. But when we are planning what we do next, because flight ticket are already booked here, and we are trying to get some money for us. We are planning to go back to India, ma'am.
So, Sanjana, if I can come to you, hopefully you will be able to get some kind of help. Unfortunately, that help hasn't come to you now. But give us a sense of what your life is right now. Are there curfews which are put in place? Have you been able to step out to get at least the basic necessities which are required to survive?
Yeah, outside situation is very normal. Like even supermarkets, all like markets are even running normally. There is no such situation outside. But yeah, as of us and our parents, they are very concerned. Like what? Because the war date is just tomorrow, and we have just one day. So not colleges like college has no official information. Like we can leave or not. Is there any online class or offline class? There is no such official news from college, as well as the embassy is also not responding anything. Yeah, we live in like we have a separate apartment. So like we have online classes right now. So like basically we have online class and we are free to do whatever we want.
Well, that's very hard. Ashish and Sanjana, we can just hope that here on Times Now, we're going to ensure that your voices reach the authorities, be it those in Kyiv or be it those in New Delhi. Listen to these students. They are coming out and telling us, yes, we've been asked to leave, but where do we get such kind of money, such expensive tickets, which are going to take us back home to safety? In fact, this is going to be the focus. Captain Bansal, if I can come to you, strategic concerns are also at play here because, Captain Bansal, as we were discussing earlier, that you already have US saying that there may be sanctions which may be imposed on Russia. How does that play out for India? After all, Russia is our long-term ally. It is the biggest arms and weapons manufacturer to India. To antagonize Russia just to keep US happy is going to be a very tightrope walk for India diplomatically.
See, there is no doubt that we have a lot of heavy price to pay for this conflict, or the rather tensions that are building up between Russia and Ukraine. We have a long-standing strategic relationship with Russia, which extends to over 5 decades. And US is, of course, now our closest ally at this point of time. We have a huge trade relationship with US.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. In fact, there is a report which is coming in. It's very important to get this for our viewers. This is a report by Al Jazeera's reporter who tells us how there are certain Russian troops which are leaving Ukraine along the border. So this would be a positive sign.